On March 11, 2020, the World Health Organization declared the coronavirus a pandemic. Soon after, on March 20th, the International Olympic Committee announced that the Tokyo Olympic Games have been postponed. Of course, the postponement of these games was for the safety of everyone involved in the Olympics, but for the athletes, it provided a whole different dynamics. For the athletes who had already earned a ticket to the Olympics, it meant that their Olympic dreams have been delayed. But for the ones who perhaps are not even ready to compete at the Olympics, it meant that their Olympic dreams have been rekindled. Regardless of how the wind blew, it meant that the athletes had to adjust their sails to deal with this COVID-19 pandemic. And for Kenya, one of the most successful African countries in the Olympic Games, the athletes were not spared from this conundrum. The Kenya women national rugby team had already qualified for the Olympics before the tournament was cancelled. However, the pre-Olympics preparations were stalled after rugby tournaments across the world were cancelled.
So everything went awry for the whole team because our first tournament was to be held in March in South Africa. That one we were going for the HFC qualifier. So things became so tough on us because these are team sports whereby we train together.
Within the country, the government effected the lockdown and suspended all sporting activities. This meant that athletes from team sports could not train together.
Yes, it really affected our training because now you are doing your individual training back at home. It's not as serious as when you're training with the team. So it was a bit difficult. And most of the people, it's not easy training alone. They need to be monitored. They need to be followed.
For the volleyball national team, who qualified for the Olympics after beating Cameroon in February 2020, the pandemic also threw a spanner in the works for them as some of the athletes' fitness levels took a beating.
3, 4, 5.
In Cameroon, the level of Kenya was really good, and with COVID, everything went down. 1 year without training, it was very, very difficult for me to monitor the players. Everyone was training at home. So I had to come up with social media, used WhatsApp to give the program to the players. Some were not following, some were following. They gained a lot of weight because it was their first time, to train alone.
Right, and the twist here, look at this hand, right? The team picks out and the get up.
But not everyone suffered negative blows during the pandemic. For example, Mercy Moim, the captain for the Malkia Strikers, came back fitter than most of her teammates after the pandemic.
Mercy Moim, she tried, she could work even extra because they have been professional players before, so they knew what they have to do. The young players was really affected because no one could direct them. But I thank the club coaches for trying their best to keep them at least not too low, but at least they were average by the time we took them.
However, athletes who had not yet qualified to the Olympics had to re-strategize because no Olympics qualifying events were being held. Runners, for example, had to hold their horses because local trials were postponed for a year. Athletics Kenya, the federation governing athletics in the country, selected a marathon team in February 2020. In that team, one Bedan Karoki was selected as a reserve marathoner. However, he has since been dropped from the team that was reselected in February 2021 because of his poor form. Despite being disoriented by the pandemic, the lives of athletes have been defined by defying the odds. When the National Olympics Committee of Kenya names the final batch of Team Kenya, the list will have the names of not only the most physically fit, but the most mentally endowed who weathered the COVID-19 storm.